여러분 안녕하세요. 틸입니다. 두잉리딩클럽에 오신 것을 환영합니다. 오늘은 미셸 오바마의 첫 번째 자서전, 최근에 두 번째 책을 또 냈더라고요. 근데 저희는 읽고 있었던 첫 번째 자서전의 챕터 3을 읽어보려고 합니다. 오늘 내용은 사실 미셸에 대한 직접적인 에피소드라기보다는 미셸이 항상 궁금해했던 그 자신의 할아버지, 왜 할아버지는 항상 뚱하고 불만이 가득할까에 대한 내용입니다. 저도 이 책을 읽기 전까지는 그 미국 사회에서 흑인들이 가지는 이미지가 왜 주로 부정적이고 이렇게 사회에 불만이 가득한지에 대해서 그 현상만 봤지 이유나 맥락에 대해서 생각해 본 적은 없었는데요. 이 부분을 읽고 이런 상황을 겪었다면은 뭐 흑인들이 아니고 어떤 인종이나 민족이든 그럴 수 있겠다는 이해가 조금이나마 생길 수 있었습니다. 그래서 오늘 여러분과도 이 부분을 함께 읽어보고 싶었습니다. My grandfather, also named Fraser Robinson, was decidedly less fun to be around. A cigar-puffing patriarch who'd sit in his recliner with the newspaper open on his lap and the evening news blaring on the television nearby. His demeanor was nothing like my father's. For Dandy, everything was an irritant. He was galled by the day's headlines, by the state of the world as shown on TV, by the young black men, boo-boos he called them, whom he perceived to be hanging uselessly around the neighborhood, giving black people everywhere a bad name. He shouted at the television. He shouted at my grandmother, a sweet, soft-spoken woman and devout Christian named Laban. My grandfather, born in 1912, was the grandson of slaves, the son of a mill worker, and the oldest of what would be 10 children in his family. A quick-witted and intelligent kid, he'd been nicknamed the Professor and set his sights early on the idea of someday going to college. But not only was he black and from a poor family, he also came of age during the Great Depression. After finishing high school, Dandy went to work at a lumber mill, knowing that if he stayed in Georgetown, his options would never widen. When the mill eventually closed, like many African Americans of his generation, he took a chance and moved north to Chicago, joining what became known as the Great Migration, in which 6 million Southern blacks relocated to big northern cities over the course of 5 decades, fleeing racial oppression and chasing industrial jobs. If this were an American dream story, Dandy, who arrived in Chicago in the early 1930s, would have found a good job and a pathway to college. But the reality was far different. Jobs were hard to come by, limited at least somewhat by the fact that managers at some of the big factories in Chicago regularly hired European immigrants over African American workers. Dandy took what work he could find, setting pins in a bowling alley and freelancing as a handyman. Gradually, he downgraded his hopes, letting go of the idea of college, thinking he'd train to become an electrician instead. But this too was quickly thwarted. If he wanted to work as an electrician or as a steel worker, carpenter, or plumber for that matter, on any of the big job sites in Chicago, you needed a union card. And if you're black, the overwhelming odds were that you weren't going to get one. In the end, he had 5 kids who were as smart and disciplined as he was. Nominee, his second child, would end up with a degree from Harvard Business School, Andrew and Carton would go on to become a train conductor and an engineer, respectively. Francesca worked as a creative director in advertising for a time and eventually became a teacher. But still, Dandy would remain unable to see his children's accomplishments as any sort of extension of his. As we saw every Sunday arriving at Parkway Gardens for dinner, my grandfather lived with the bitter residue of his own dashed dreams. 네, 여러분 어떠셨나요? 굉장히 영민했던 미셸의 할아버지가 일찍부터 대학교에 가고 어떤 그런 꿈을 누구든 가질 수 있었던 그런 꿈을 품었었지만 정말 개인이 어찌할 수 없는 그런 시대적인 흐름에 떠밀려서 조금도 꿈을 펼쳐보지 못하고 그냥 할 수 있는 직업을 찾아서 일하다가 이제는 노인이 되어버린 이런 사연이 분명 미국에서는 미셸의 할아버지만의 이야기는 아닐 거라고 생각이 됩니다. 그리고 비록 할아버지의 자녀들은 모두 잘 커서 사회에서 중요한 몫을 감당하고 있지만 그 할아버지의 내면의 만족감까지 주지는 못한다는 점이 저는 좀 공감이 갔어요. 개인의 꿈을 펼친다는 게 얼마나 인생에서 소중한 일인지를 다시 한번 생각해 볼 수 있었습니다. 특히 이때랑 달리 요즘 같은 시대는 얼마든지 저희가 마음먹기에 따라 꿈을 향해 노력을 할 수 있는 때라고 생각을 하는데요. 그런 때에 나는 얼마나 이 시대를 잘 활용하고 있는지 한번 질문을 하게 되더라고요. 여러분께도 펼치지 못하고 있었던 꿈이나 아니면은 좀 더 깊게 들여다보지 못했던 그런 관심사가 있으시다면 잠시나마 돌아보고 행복한 삶에 대해서 내가 할 수 있는 것들이 무엇이 있는지를 생각해 보셨으면 좋겠습니다. 네, 오늘도 함께 해주셔서 감사합니다. Hope to see you again. Bye!